There is one thing missing. Hope it's gonna work. Okay, so the idea to have this seminar was a long idea, or idea that I had for a long time. But on that time, we didn't have enough preventive care students, so we could not start this. And now we have more than 20 students. So then we decided, okay, we will start 2 new activities that are gonna be recurrent or kind of every week, at least during this time of COVID. One is the Spirituality and Health Forum, and the other one is going to be the Preventive Care Grand Rounds. The Preventive Care Grand Rounds, we will start in the fall after you set your courses there. And Spirituality and Health, we are starting right now. So what we want to do in the Spirituality Health Forum is to present some ideas about the Bible mostly, and how those principles or ideas in the Bible match with health. As we are a Christian university, and specifically we are from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the Adventists have a tradition of health. Many people think that this tradition is related to mystic approaches, mysticism, or spiritual issues there. But in fact, the main issue is related to health. So we are going to explore those issues during these forums, and then show what is that we found in the Bible that is related to health. Why we approach health on this is mostly related to some principles that we find in the Bible. So that's the main aspect of, or the main topic, or the main goal of these forums, is to discuss how we interact with health principles and the Bible. And as much as possible, we will put some evidences from science that kind of match the Adventist tradition, the principles in the Bible, and the scientific knowledge. I like this introduction here. Life is fragile, handle with prayer. And so this is being very interesting to me, because when I started my medical profession, or my health profession, and this was in 1978 when I finished my medical course, on that time, the psychiatry and psychology were not in good relationship with spirituality. And I remember some of my professors, they even mentioned that religion was a cause of mental disability and not mental health. But fortunately, today we have a lot of research saying that religion and spirituality is protective in general. And those are the things that we will explore here. And religion is protective, or spirituality is protective towards mental health, physical health, and emotional health, and several different factors. And we will discuss those things here. So my first panel discussion, well, it's not a panel discussion. My first topic is going to be the original diet that was prescribed in the Bible. The original diet is this written in Genesis 1:29 and 30. Then God said, I give you every seed plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. It's not included there, the fish, because the fish cannot get to the plants for food. But I believe we can include the fish there that's supposed to eat the algae and all the plankton that they have in the oceans and rivers. But why did I include in the discussion today the second part of the verse? Usually, when we talk about vegetarian and vegetarian diets, we only include the first part of the verse, or just the 29, Genesis 1:29. That is the every seed-bearing plant and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. So this is what. So I put the second one just to maybe illustrate that the animals were created vegetarian too. And so what happened to them maybe was the theory of the involution, not the evolution, meaning that they have to adjust to a place that didn't have sometimes much green, and then they become carnivores or somehow. But one day we will discuss a little more in another forum about that in more details. But just for you to know that there is a verse in the Bible that says that the lion will eat the green as together with the lamb. So just an illustration. We will get to that. But the interesting part is that the main food that God created was from the vegetable kingdom. And we have here the description of creation. So God created all of the structure in terms of water, air, sun, and then until the fourth day, they have all the structure of the world together, of the earth. And then in day 5, he started creating to feel, on day 3rd, he created the vegetation. And then they create the sun and moon in day 4. But when he created the vegetation, so now there is enough food for the other creatures that will come later. So if he created the creatures before, they might stay 1 or 2 days starving. And that was not good. At least it's not perfect according to God's plan. So, well, I'm trying to read God's mind here. But in any case, the creatures were created after they have food for it. And that's why on day 6, he creates all the creatures in the land and also man. And then on day 7, God rests. So if you compare to the main diets or main food guides that we have today, all of them will somehow follow that diet that was given in the beginning. For instance, this is the MyPlate.gov, and you can see on this that it has maybe 75% a vegetable diet, or a diet based in the foods that are from the trees and from the seed-bearing plants, okay? And there is one maybe 25% that is protein that they can come from vegetables, but in that case here they accentuate that it should be from animal sources. And also they put the dairy there, and this is a big discussion for other types of food guides, as I'm gonna go now. So the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, that is led by Dr. Neil Barnard, they have a perfect circle of foods, of a perfect plate that include 100% vegetables on that. Fruits, grains, legumes, and vegetables, and have all the food groups divided on that. So that's essentially matches with the diet that is original. I'm saying that in with one reason, because it's easy for us Christians to believe that we are vegetarians from the beginning because it's written in the Bible, Genesis 1:29, period. We were created vegetarians. If you are not Christian, if you are evolutionist, if you are atheist, so you have to come out with a lot of discussion. Some evolutionists think that we were first hunters, and then we became vegetarians, or we became omnivores. I mean, we eat everything. Some evolutionists believe that we were vegetarians by origin, gatherers, and then we become hunters when vegetables were not available. But we don't need to go on this discussion because we go on the creation. So if you start checking a little more food plates that are sincere, or they don't have the influence of the lobbies of sugar, of meats, of dairy, you see that the whole plate could be only vegetables, only from the vegetable kingdom. This is the Harvard one. You have vegetables, they put more vegetables than fruits. Mostly, I believe, is because of the calorie count. And then whole grains and healthy proteins. And if you check the healthy proteins, they put fish, poultry, beans, and nuts. Limit red meat and cheese. Avoid bacon, cold cuts, and other processed meats. So very specific. And this is from Harvard. You don't need to go to get something more scientific than that. And they don't have the dairy there. In the upper right, you have there what? Water. And this also matches exactly with one of my favorite food guides that is from Canada. This is the Canadian food plate. They have essentially 50% of the plate should be fruits and vegetables. Even though you can see that it looks like this is French fries in the vegetables. Maybe it's not fried, it's a potato, baked potato, I hope, and I would advise that. But then we have the protein foods and the whole grains. 25% of protein and 25% of whole grains. I believe this is very good, and I believe this represents all food groups that we need. And then they also agree with Harvard. They put water as we don't need to have another dairy group there. But in the proteins, you can see in the proteins, if you go a little more into that, they have the proteins that are from meat, but you don't need to consume meat proteins. You can consume dairy. There is cheese and yogurt there, but you can eat all eggs also. And then you can consume all the the vegetable proteins there, like beans. I have kidney beans, garbanzo beans, soybeans, and then you have nuts and you have tofu. So it's enough protein in these groups, and so people could have a good nutrition from this. I'm talking. I know that some of you are dietitians and would like to go further on that. One thing is important here is that in these groups they don't exclude the carbs. There is a big trend now. Okay, let's get rid of carbs and let's do ketogenic diets. But once you take this, you don't need to take maybe a lot of carbs and refined carbs, but you need carbs. You need for energy if you are going to do exercise, for mental health, for the cellular processes in the body. You need carbohydrates, and it looks like the brain is the main consumer of carbohydrates. So if you don't eat carbs, you might get in trouble there. So what we advise is to eat carbs that have fiber. And as we run the full plate diet here in Loma Linda, the full plate diet advises 40 grams of fiber per day. And in my experience, I am even considering that 40 should be for women and 50 should be for men. We are still playing with those numbers, but that's one diet that follow the original diet a little closer. Okay, now I'm gonna stop sharing screen, and then I'm gonna open here for some discussion or some inputs from you guys. I think I stopped sharing the screen. So in summary, we were created vegetarian. So if you have a Christian background, you have an assurance for that. What happened then was that for mostly because sometimes, like after the flood, vegetables and were not available, so we start eating whatever we had at hand, and then it looks like we like those, and we never stop eating those things. And I don't understand that, and it became a time that meat was considered the main food. I remember I am from south of Brazil, and I have friends everywhere in the world, and it looks like in every single country they consider, well, if you don't eat meat, you are gonna be sick. You need to have this, and in fact, the meat is not the main thing. As you see in the food guides, protein is just 25% of our needs in terms of volume. And if we go by calories, would be 15% of the calories should be from protein. We still need to eat more fruits, vegetables, and grains. So I have a friend that was a pastor, and one time I asked him, "Are you pastor? Are you vegetarian, pastor?" And he said, "Yes." But I knew that he was not vegetarian. But then he came with that, well, I eat fruits and vegetables and grains and bread, and my diet is 80% from the vegetable kingdom. If it's 80%, it's the majority of my diet, so I am vegetarian. So he was not wrong. And most of people have to agree that we cannot go on those diets that put protein first. Even though there is a trend now, I have a discussion with a lady that entered in the ketogenic diet, and she said, my blood sugar was controlled, my cholesterol goes down. Okay, I told her, that's good for you, but because you are in a low calorie diet, but I'm not sure what's gonna happen to you in the long term. Anyways, I'm talking too much. It's 26 minutes now. Open up for for our discussions and your opinion. Anybody? Any of the dietitians, please?
Okay, I will chime in then. Going back to the MyPlate, I think we see more and more of the recommended servings and food groups not specifying dairy, because I think the intent now is just to substitute and say, well, any source that provides you calcium is what we're looking for to fill that dairy slot. And there are many other ways to get that calcium. And one of the easy plant-based ways to do that is by eating broccoli. So, you know, when we see that dairy component, I think it was on the Canadian plate that it's now been replaced by the glass of water. I think also on the Harvard illustration, it was the same. So still like moving more so in that plant-based, plant-forward kind of way of eating as opposed to animal-based, even through dairy products.
Yeah, I believe either the Canadian and Harvard, they put the dairy together with the protein. That makes sense. So,
what I like about the changes that have been made with how nutrition is being taught nowadays is that I have one plate at my office, and half of the plate is all vegetables. And this is what I try to mention to my patients, that, you know, we can have a lot of nutrition from just eating vegetables. And instead of having half of your plate of some type of animal protein, you can have it from vegetables, and then a quarter of that from some whole grain or starch, healthy starch. And then the other one can be some type of a protein food. So it could be a legume or some type of or tofu, something like that. And I think for people, especially that want to lose weight, it's a good way to approach it, because they're getting very little calories, 25 kilocalories per half a cup if it's cooked in vegetables, whereas they could be getting up to 100 calories per ounce in a piece of meat. So, and lots of cholesterol and fat. So I like that approach, that the majority of our plate could be vegetables, especially the non-starchy ones.
good. I think I am not a dietitian. I am a nutritionist. I have my CNS, Certified Nutrition Specialist. But I remember when I did a master in nutrition in Loma Linda. So when I was doing that, one thing that was complicated for the client was going through the pyramids and all of this. It was a little messy to explain to the public how you can eat, or the amounts that you can eat. And when they put in a plate, really simplify the things. So I think it was a great idea to condense everything in a plate. So this was a progress. Now we are still discussing what should be on that plate, but there is a general agreement. Half of this should be fruits and vegetables. I like the idea. Some people still have I would say, kind of a prejudice against fruits. I remember in Loma Linda, maybe about 10 years ago, there was a professor that came from some universities here, and he was talking about the new trends in the eating behavior of Americans. And then he said, we believe that people are eating too much fruits, and because of fruits, the rates of obesity will increase. And then I almost throw a tomato on this guy, because There is nothing to do with fruits. Come on. Fruits will not increase obesity levels. I mean, I believe the problem with fruits is when you are obese or when you are diabetic, so your body is completely in trouble, then you have to be careful. But in terms of prevention, I don't believe that this is the cause of the problem, as it is saturated fat and refined carbs and so. But that's my opinion. Based on the original diet, we should not be afraid of prescribing more fruits. Okay, anybody else? I think we have a good group there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Dr. Dos Santos.
Hi.
I just want
Rico is another preventive care student, and he is a physician too.
Yeah. Dr. Dos Santos, I listened to a presentation about 6 months ago from a nutritionist from Colombia. She mentioned the spirit of prophecy, saying that we should not. Of course, I checked that. I think she misquoted or she misread the passage in the spirit of prophecy talking about fruits. And then she said, we are not supposed to eat fruits because fruits are going to be fermented in our bodies and then we get drunk. And then that's why we're getting cirrhosis.
Oh my goodness.
I said, oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have some of those extremes.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
As a joke, I think it's okay. But
yeah, it's not scientific, and it's not according to the original diet. So, and it's not even like in agreement with our tradition. So we have 3 points here in this presentation. We have the Bible, we have the Adventist tradition, and we have science. And we are going to talk about those 3 areas, as sometimes they don't agree. But in this case, I believe they agree. There is no problem with fruits. There is another point that that we need to clarify on that. Why is that we cannot use this diet without supplementation? So what do you guys think about that? So that's the original diet, that's the ideal diet, but you still need to supplement. Why?
Vitamin B12?
Yeah, vitamin B12.
Yes, comes from animals, but I understand that soil can have some vitamin B12. So if we had a little dirt on our food, we could be okay. So, but I'm sure when Adam and Eve were around, the soil and everything was perfect, so they didn't have to worry about being vitamin B12 deficient.
Yeah, I don't buy much on that, okay? Even though the soil has bacteria and produce that, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe the vitamin B12 was produced in our intestine and our mouth, and then we have bacteria there, and somehow we absorb that from ourselves only. And that's something that we kind of lost with the time. As the soil is depleted of B12 because of the treatment that they do to plants, and then with the pesticides and all of these things, our bodies also are depleted with bacteria that produce B12 because of using all sorts of medications and water treatment, water and things like that. So that's the problem with B12. But I don't buy that we should eat dirty soil in order to supply our B12. I believe that the idea is that we used to have and we don't have. We still have some bacteria, some production of B12 in the mouth and in the intestines. The problem is that is more into the colon, and in the colon, the bacteria that produce B12 cannot be absorbed there. And then the absorption is doing the ileum, that is the, and then there is a discussion on that if we have. But it's interesting that it looks like 40% of vegetarians that are total vegetarians don't have a problem with B12 deficiency, even without supplementation. So they might have another thing. So this is a kind of a study that one time I would like to do. People without supplementation, how they get their B12. But this is something for my students to research, the ones that are interested in the area.
I have a question. Do you think that people with dysbiosis, when they have a higher ratio of the unfriendly bacteria versus the friendly one in the gut, those may be the ones that have or become more likely to be vitamin B12 deficient?
Yeah, it might be. It might be that one. And it might be also related to digestion, because there is a factor R, if I am not wrong. You can
intrinsic factor
that you have in the stomach. So if you don't have a good function of the stomach, like gastritis or ulcers, you might not have intrinsic factor, and then you are not going to absorb enough vitamin B12. So this is something also that can be involved.
And I believe as we get older, the intrinsic factor levels go down, and this is why older people usually have to get like vitamin B12 shots. I know that happened to my husband's grandmother, who lived to 108, almost 109. But there's an interesting article or story from Ellen G. White that she wrote to this doctor who was very ill, and she told him that he needed to eat eggs, and the problem was vitamin B12 deficiency. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular story.
Yeah, I know the story that they put eggs with grape juice.
Oh, okay.
We raw eggs with grape juice, and this makes sense for those that have anemia or some deficiency, because we have a lot of iron, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, and you have the B12 and protein from the eggs. Yeah, there is. So for those that are completely against the animals, there is one point that we have to make here. Once a person is not vegetarian, and it's very common to see a person non-vegetarian goes to a extreme, and then you say, okay, I'm gonna be vegan now. So in this transition, if this is not done correctly, sometimes this vegan person gets very weak and start suffering, start having colds, and start. So this means that this transition was not well done. So it's important, and this also matches with our traditions. It's good that you can go backwards a little bit to see until you are able to get there. But it looks like your body is not adjusted to this. So you better go back and eat something that will maintain your weight, maintain your health, maintain your immune system. And that's something important. Today, people are now paying attention to the immune system. In the past, okay, I'm gonna do a diet for weight management. No matter what, I need to lose the weight. But if you lose the weight and you get sick, then you are in trouble, and you get COVID-19 now. So it's not is not a good idea. We have to maintain our body functioning. And I believe this is a principle. If you change your diet and go to a extreme and this gets you sick, you have to go back, at least go back one step or one stage.
Yeah, back then it sounds like this doctor was on an extreme diet. And so she was the one, Ellen White was the one that told them to go ahead and eat eggs. And I'm sure back then there was no fortification in food. So he was missing out on that as well. Whereas today we have a lot of that going on. So it's less likely for people to become vitamin B12 deficient.
And that's why I understand now why our health message in the world sometimes does not go with vegetarian diets. Because I learned about vegetarian diets when I was almost 20 years old. And I was born in the church in South Brazil. But on that time, they say eat the clean meats, don't drink, don't smoke. Here, that was the health message that we got. But when I think about, and I was always thinking, well, why they didn't mention about vegetarian? So once I read the books and then I was old, is that I found about that. But they didn't mention in great part because the country was not ready for that. I might not have the substitute. It's the same that you go to Congo, Uganda, and Nigeria, and go to the rural parts, and it's like you get a homeless guy here in the streets and say, "Hey, guy, you have to be vegetarian." It doesn't make any sense. The guy does not have anything to eat. You have to provide food first. Then, with the time, if there is provision for you to change and go in the right direction, then we go. But not you cannot be extremes. You cannot go to extremes in places that are restricted in terms of food sources. I remember one time there was a pastor that was vegan and was sent to the Amazon to work with the Indians there, with the native South Americans. And he spent there a few years and they sent him back. They reject because his message was vegetarianism for the Indians, and he was preaching that they should not eat fish. Come on, they only have fish to eat. Even Jesus Christ, when he was here, he ate fish because this was the only food. There was no other provision on that time. If you don't eat fish, you are going to starve and you are going to get sick. And so those are the problems that sometimes happen because people have this idea and so start throwing these ideas without thinking.
Well, I guess something that could happen in that instance would be in children, maybe kwashiorkor, because they would eat a lot of plantains and maybe cassava. But if they don't have the fish or like that kind of protein or beans, then they could become quite deficient in that.
Well, when I finish my nutrition, you guys can fix that. But when I finished my nutrition was a long time ago. They mentioned that the reason for malnourishment in those countries was not missing one group, but was missing food at all. If they have food, they will be, if they have cassava, whatever, they will not be malnourished. And then was not because of lack of one single nutrient, but they didn't have food in general. So I believe it's still on. Is that right? This idea is still valid or not? You can fix me. You can correct me if you.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I know that kwashiorkor is lack of protein, and then marasmus is lack of calories. They're not getting so, it could be, because I know I have seen kids with a big bellies, and that's more of a protein deficiency. But I'm sure there could be parasites too. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyways, it's just something. It's not to the topic of this thing. we go back. We don't defend that the idea to eliminate food groups. We believe that good nourishment, it has to have the major macronutrients there for health. So we have to go on that.
I think also a greater point that we're kind of leading to is that the need for nutrition and diet to be like culturally or ethnically sensitive and relevant to the foods that actually people have. And it's kind of tending to support this path that in general nutrition seems to be on, where it's becoming more and more personalized, even though our findings and our research tends to be applied to populations, but in the end, it comes down to that individual person and what their needs are. For example, I have gone to Uganda. I think you mentioned that. And it, like you say, you can't say, well, you shouldn't be eating fish if fish is all they have. Well, I was going to these rural villages and really all they had was cassava, and the national dish was called matoke. And it was this boiled green bananas that had just been boiled and steamed to really like mush. And by the time they were so steamed, they really didn't have a lot of nutritional value. But what they did have was some calories and a means to make people feel full so they could get through their day and get through to their next meal. And for me, I could only see, the lack of the nutrients and things, but I am not going to be able to fight against, a national dish. All I could do, when going to villages would be to say, okay, why don't you please bring out like all the different foods that you have, and then we will try to make a plan for how that works or add some things to it to increase nutritional value within the very small budget that they still had.
That's great. That's great. You remind me about China. I have a friend that went to, I used to work in Hong Kong, and we interact with the missionaries that go to inner China. We are talking about Western China. It's a rural China. And he said, sometimes I went to a potluck, you know what they serve? White rice. Mm-hmm. And that's it. There is nothing else. It was white rice. So in some villages, in some poor countries or poor areas, that's what they have. So the function is that they have other foods. And then I like what Michelle mentioned, that our function as health professionals, if we go to those places, is to raise that the nutrition value of those foods, or at least raise the awareness of that. And then brings another issue. I remember one time I was watching a group of people that was asking for money for a mission trip to Africa. And then they said, well, we need to have more money because we need to buy candy. And then I said, come on, man, are you going to take candy to, well, because if we give candy to the kids, they will come for the meetings, they will come for the dental procedures, and they will come for the medical procedure. I say, okay, I think we could do better. We could buy balls, we could buy yo-yos, we can buy some, not candies, come on. Because the problem, if you go and check what's happening in this third world, or I should not use the third world, this developing world, I still have this old mentality of third world. I am from the third world, so don't need to, I don't need to apologize much because this is my country. but we don't consider, we consider developing world or middle income world. And then the transition that they pass, the epidemiologic transition, mostly is being wrong. So they come with a malnourishment way, where they don't have enough nutrients there, and then they go to, instead of going to the balanced nourishment way, they go to McDonald's age nutrition that goes from undernutrition to high nutrition but undernourishment. So is fat, is refined carbs, is fried foods, is all of these, and excess of protein that will change the profile of the disease. So the epidemiologic transition will change the way of the epidemiology. Nutrition will lead to a different epidemiological pattern of disease. And this goes with the progress, the industrialization. The industrialization leads to nutrition changes and will lead to different patterns of disease that we know that are happening now. Diabetes is the main morbidity in the world. Heart disease is the main cause of death everywhere, maybe not in Chad or not in Haiti, 2 or 3 countries that are so poor that they cannot afford obesity. But for most of other countries, this is the problem. So our function now, as if you want to go to mission trips, is what Michelle is doing. So you go there and you try to reach, try to see what they have that can have more nutrients. Thank you, Michelle, for that.
Yes. Just one other little quick comment about the candy. We had kind of the similar thing where you want people to come in from rural areas and come into these clinics so that they can be treated or they can get the protein bars or whatever we have for them. And one of the ideas was to give them shoes, to give them like the plastic flip-flop kind of sandals, because they were cheap and easy, lightweight, but it also protected the kids from picking up infections through cuts and abrasions on their feet, which we would see a lot. And so the shoes would still be something, a means of attracting people to come to get medical or nutritional guidance or some kind of assistance, but it was also a useful thing in other dimensions where it reduced infection. And, you know, then we didn't have so many people that needed to be cared for these cuts and infections and things like that. So there are alternatives to candy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, anybody else want to say something? We have kind of a small group. What do you guys think is, maybe anybody want to say, and then I'm going to stop recording, and then we will discuss a little bit about the strategy of these type of seminars. Any other comment on that? No? So I stopped the recording, okay?